All right, hello, hello, hello. We're trying to react to some articles because we can't just keep reacting to nothing or thin air. So we have this post from the SWDL, which talks about sex bots. Now it's from 2021, but so it's kind of old, right? But I think it's worth talking about because I'm basically just using this article to talk about something larger. I don't really care about this specific article. This article is more like something I can talk about to have an excuse to ramble, basically, right? So let's first start with my position on sex bots. I would never use them. Me personally, I would never use them because uh, I kind of see it as a desperation, and so I would never use them because I'm not desperate like that. But I also understand that there are a lot of men out there who have been sexually, romantically, socially neglected by society, and so they turn to these counterfeit substitute goods for sex, and they turn to that because society has kind of given them no real other option. I mean, men are sexual creatures. Men do look for sexual release and sexual fulfillment. And oftentimes, if you're not a superficially attractive dude, then you don't get a lot of matches on dating apps. You don't get women who want to go on a bunch of dates with you. You know, so because of the way we've constructed modern society, a lot of men have been abandoned, basically neglected. If we had a society where the economy and the political structure was based around sexual access, we would basically have like a feudal system. We basically have everyone's a slave, nobody gets anything, and then there's a few men at the top in this like oligarchical system who get everything. There's a few guys like scruffing it out for scraps and for single mothers. And then the majority of people are like peasants right before the French Revolution. Everyone's poor. Everyone's scraping breadcrumbs off the floor, just looking for anything. And so women will get mad at guys. They'll be like, oh, how dare you? That's animalistic. That's depraved. That's evil. And maybe you're right to an extent, but instead of shaming and demonizing men for having biological impulses, you should have empathy and you should look at these men and go, wow, we've failed them so much. They are so deprived, they are so desperate and lonely that they're willing to turn to a sex bot. They're willing to turn to OnlyFans. They're willing to use an anime body pillow. Yes, it's degenerate. Yes, it's depraved. But despite that, these men are so desperate and so starved that they're willing to do this. And that should be a wake up call for women and society to take responsibility and accountability for failing, their sons, or failing their brothers, failing their family, failing the people that they knew in their school, for not creating a community that's, better and doesn't create these kinds of quote unquote monsters, these evil men. Because really, at the end of the day, it's just women don't know how to empathize with the fact that men have a base biological urge that, often goes unmet for 20 years, 30 years. Most guys, right? A lot of guys never get laid. I would say the majority of men are sexually starved. Maybe you had one 6 months ago. So if you're not a total incel, maybe oh, I dated a girl 6 months ago. You've been starved for 6 months. That's just seen as a normal thing in society today. And it's kind of like no wonder that these guys are on porn. No wonder these guys are doing sex bots and body pillows and all this other OnlyFans degenerate shit, because their ancestors would have been married off to a wife who was obligated by the Bible, by their church, by their community, by their faith to sexually satisfy their husbands. That was a obligation in the marital contract, the marital vows. That's part of your duty as a wife. Now, nobody's getting married. They're getting married at 30 instead of 20, having no kids, and we have all these men who are sexually starved in our society, who barely even have the motivation to get up and go to work, who are offing themselves, and we're going to point the finger at them and go, you're a monster, you're depraved, you're this, you're that, to the poor Asian guy who's 5'3", who's, of course he's not jacked, of course he's not rich, he's not going to make six figures, he's not going to be a CEO. There can only be so many people who make six figures and are CEOs and are banker chads. There can only be so many. The rest of them are peasants. And the rest of them, and I don't say that in a demeaning way, that's just the reality of how things are. And if we push for feminism, if we push for a system that promotes sexual liberation and having sex outside of marriage, well, then you're going to have a lot of sexless guys and you're going to have a lot of whores. That's just the system that feminists and most sexual liberation people have pushed for. And the real reason, the real reason women don't like sex bots is the common red pill thing to say is that women don't like sex bots because it challenges their monopoly on male sexuality. That's, in case you guys didn't know, that's like the common red pill argument is that like, well, women like to have control over men, they like the attention from men, so sex bot steals their attention. That's one part of it, and that's true, but I think more than that is that sex bots remind, and porn too, porn, sex bots, anime body pillows, sex bots are just porn leveled up. It's like porn 10. Now it's a physical piece of porn, right? So I'm kind of categorizing them as the same thing for the sake of this argument. But what I'm trying to say is the real reason that women really don't like sex bots is because it reminds them that they've been neglecting men, that their guilty conscience comes up and it goes, hey, we're creating a society of men and boys who don't have anyone in their life, who turn to these depraved, unfortunate things just to meet their base biological urge, and they feel guilty. And they're like, shit, this is not good. Like, this is not good for men. It is sad. It is kind of sad that men have to turn to these things. So I will not shame men for using porn, for using sex bots, for using whatever. I think you should try to improve yourself, definitely. But I also understand that not everyone can be Chad. Not everyone is going to be 6 feet. Not everyone is going to make a ton of money. And as the system becomes more hypergamous, there have to be losers. There are going to be people who take the short end of the stick, no matter how hard you work, no matter what you do, right? Maybe you're just born with shitty genetics. There is components of the black pill where, yeah, you should work as hard as you can, but when I'm making a generalization. I'm saying there are going to be men inevitably that end up losing. That's the nature of realities. There's going to be winners and losers, no matter how hard an individual might work. I'm talking about people at large. So you listening, yes, you should work as hard as you can so you're not the depraved lolicon person using anime body pills and subscribing to OnlyFans. But there are going to be people like that. There's always going to be losers in the sexual marketplace, in the sexual competition that is the hypergamous West. And really that's women's fault. Women need to take accountability for abandoning decent men who did nothing wrong, men who didn't have parents to look after them, didn't have fathers to teach them, didn't have loyal mothers who kept the family intact and raised good daughters to be good wives to these men. And women hate accountability. So really when they see men on porn, what's really going off in their brain is someone should be loving this man and he shouldn't have to turn to this. Imagine you have a peasant who's in the, I don't know, it was like 1700s of France. Rate poor, French Revolution is about to break out, political tensions are high, the underclass is struggling, starving majorly, and a noble walks by and he's looking at a peasant who is scraping up breadcrumbs off of the floor just so that they can eat. And then the noble laughs at him and he goes, ha ha ha, look at this depraved loser. He's picking up dirty breadcrumbs off the floor and shoving them into his mouth. What a depraved monster loser. It's like, bro, that's your fault. Like, the political system, the wealth distribution economic system that you're taking advantage of and hoarding all the wealth, that's because of you. That's because of people like you. And we should have empathy for these type of individuals who are struggling, not shame them for doing what they have to do to get by, right? That's the attitude we would have to a homeless person. We wouldn't be like, haha, look at this stupid homeless person. It'd be like, bro, like, society's gonna create struggle, and we should have empathy for the people who are struggling at the bottom, not laugh at them. We should try to elevate them, right? And actually, it's not just that there will inevitably be losers, but this hypergamous, non-monogamous system is creating more of these losers. So we have more men on porn. We have more men who are going to buy into these sex bots. And it's a reminder to women that we failed, and men are going to opt out of our system. They're going to leave this stupid game of taking women on dates and paying for things and trying to be nice and marrying 30-year-old women for one kid and like sandpaper puniti that's all fucking dry, and like you need lube just to fucking not get rashes on your dick, right? These type of women. So men are going to say, fuck that, I'll take the sex bot and never have to think about women again. Anytime she starts talking too much, I can just hit a switch, turn her off. And yeah, women, part of it's like women feel like, oh, we have to compete with sex bots. That's not good. That's a threat to our monopoly on male attention. Which porn does the same thing, right? But the real reality is that women have failed men, and men are opting out of women. And then women will make posts on these like, well, but she's not a real person. She can't love you. It's like, you haven't been loving men either. If you offered men at large love and commitment, and were not rejecting them on superficial traits, if you were not holding them up to impossible standards that only the top 5% of men can make, because that's what hypergamy is denying sexual access to the vast majority of men in favor of the top 5%. That's really what it is. Until you hit 30 and you need like a beta, or you have a kid with an alpha, then you look for a beta. But yeah, you're robbing the majority of men of love and sexual access, and then these men are opting out, and they're rejecting society, they're rejecting women, and that is a big danger to women. Part of it's like they feel threatened and they're afraid, because if men are opting out of their system, well then who's going to support their system? Who's going to take care of them? Who's going to pay for their social security? Who's going to pay for the maternity leave? Who's going to pay their taxes? Who's going to keep voting in more, Democrat or Republican even politicians? If men aren't invested in the system, then that becomes a problem. And this kind of lack of sexual investment, genetic investment, legacy investment from men on some kind of a sexual genetic front kind of leads to this disinvestment in the system at large. And it's very dangerous. But then the other part of that, aside from just being afraid that like, oh look, men are leaving, they also feel a sense of guilt, because they're like, men don't even want to talk to us. They don't even want to be around us. They don't want to get married to us. They don't want to have love and commitment from a real woman. Women understand that men naturally want love. Men naturally want connection with a real woman. That's true. And a lot of men are heartbroken, and it forces women to acknowledge the heartache of men. It's like, you can have a guy who, he struggles, he's not doing too great in life, but then he kills himself when he offs himself, right? Then you're like, whoa. Like, it really exemplifies and proves that things are wrong, that there's something wrong with the system. Until then, you can just kind of ignore it. Whatever, it's no big deal. But suddenly a partner cheats on you, whoa, they were not happy with the situation. Somebody offs themselves, whoa, they were not okay. And so when men walk away from women, MGTOW, or choose to settle with a sex bot or settle with some porn and say, yeah, we don't need women, we'll just have, our body pillow, fuck it, I give up. Women go like, whoa, like, don't you want love? Don't you want commitment? They do. You failed them. You failed to offer them that. you've rejected them, and then they're forced to acknowledge that by men's disengagement, by men's giving up and recession. So it's a sensitive topic for multiple reasons, and as a Christian, I say we should probably have empathy for these individuals, and we should try to create a system that's not feminist, not hypergamous, not filled with a bunch of sluts, so that men can have wives who are actually decent wives and aren't, about to divorce them and cause headache. So if you're a male Christian, you're like, I'm a tradcon, your goal shouldn't be shaming men into your shitty system. It should be, let's fix this system and make it more hospitable to men. So men want to come back. Let's naturally incentivate men with some virgin wives. If you're a tradcon Catholic dude, old guy, or you want to raise your family, how do you get men reinvested into the system? Preserve, put on ice, right? Store in the cellar until 18, let it age until 18. Some wives for these men. Stop sending them to colleges, secular, atheistic colleges, to go get gangbanged by atheists. You're a ma trad. I've seen tons of ma Catholics do this. So I'm talking about you specifically, Catholics, but also other Christians too, I bet. Stop sending your daughters to secular colleges. You're an idiot. And then don't come around at men and go, why aren't you marrying them? Why aren't you? You didn't preserve your daughter. You didn't create someone who was worthy of being a wife. You didn't teach her how to cook. You didn't teach her to obey her father and be a decent woman and dress well. Like, you fucked up. And that's your fault. You need to fix women's behavior as parents or as women yourselves, right? To make men take a second look at your offer, your proposal. Because if men are walking away from your proposal, you can't just shame men. No, sign the deal, do it. Don't you want love? No, make the offer better, improve the proposal, fix it. And that's something that they'll never do, because that would force them to take accountability. That takes a lot of self-awareness and humility, and that will never happen. Even from the tradcons, who are supposed to exemplify virtues like humility, right? But they won't. They'll just shame men, and they'll waggle their finger, and she's a great woman, she's reformed, she's all this, she's that. How dare you how dare you demand a virgin? How dare you demand a good woman, for a virtuous woman for your family? How dare you demand that? You should have mercy and used up a used slut. That's all they say. Or they say, well, I'm not going to control women. They say dumb shit like defending feminism. So yeah, part of it's they want to control men, but part of it's they don't want to have to take accountability for the failing that is men's sexual preferences for robots. So let's read through it quickly. It's already 18 minutes in. But let's read through it quickly and see if we can affirm any of the things that I just said, right? We'll see if any of that resonates. Blah, blah, blah. The world is only now beginning to grapple with many nuances of sexual consent on a large scale due to feminist movements like Me Too. Okay, that's great. But with futurists predicting meaningful relationships with sentient robots within a matter of decades, we might have to quickly progress to even more nuanced discussions around consent. The $30 billion sex industry, obviously for profit, is geared to creating more hyper-realistic, intelligent robot companions for their top audience, cis straight men. I mean, it could be lesbian women too. You don't know that. In the years to come, as robots get more sophisticated, AI, they will gain independent decision-making skills that will give them a specific legal status as electronic persons, according to a 2016 draft put by the EU Parliament. That's pretty retarded. So a computer can have rights as an electronic person? That's pretty mentally retarded. When does it become an electronic person? Is my graphing calculator an electronic person? When does it become a person? I mean, you don't give fetuses personhood, even though they're literally capable of doing most things humans can, but we're going to give robots personhood? That's pretty retarded. The draft said the more autonomous robots are, the less they can be considered simple tools in the hands of other actors. As a consequence, it should really be in the hands of philosophers, not politicians. Because politicians will just push whatever makes money for their handlers, right? For their owners. It becomes more and more urgent to address the fundamental question of whether robots should possess a legal status. I say no. Like, fuck it. And the only reason they want to do that is to control men's access, and so they can regulate it. That's why, and control it. They want the government to be able to control it, not the private individual. That's the real reason. When included as citizens and part of a civil society who receives citizenship from Saudi Arabia, blah blah blah. So there's a bunch of legal questions. The legal community should make it very clear that any members of the who enjoys the status of personhood needs to give his, her, their, its, them, Zer, or its consent before any sexual acts. Do I have to give consent to my pocket puniti before I use it? Do I have to give consent to my hand? Right? Right? Does the guy's anime body pillow have to consent? What if I just program the robot to consent? There you go. There, problem solved. I just program it to always consent. Genius. So then you're controlling how I program it, which is kind of retarded. Sex robots I can give and withdraw consent or exist, but the models of consent utilize are a work in progress. Can only simulate consent rather than actively give consent. Well, that seems to be like a problem altogether. They can only simulate consent. Well, robots can only, or AI can only simulate thinking and simulate conversations. They can't actually think properly or converse properly the same way humans can. So this is exactly why it needs to be up to intelligent philosophers who know what they're doing, not random politicians and blog authors. A California-based cult group, Unicults, nice, started a fundraiser for a sexbot brothel that allows customers to only have intercourse with robots after they use a relevant app to converse with them enough. Can you imagine they put some like giant spikes in the puniti hole? It's just like spikes and spinning blades. They're like, join the cult or else. It's a blood pact. I didn't think like this. Their dick's just getting chopped up inside the thing. You imagine? That's true as well. Can you get charged with assault if you assault a robot? They don't. That's a problem with like consent. It's like, well, what if it doesn't consent, or what if I turn it off? Also, can a robot go onto a stand and like participate in a like rape case against me and act as a witness? Probably not. Oh, look, an actual philosopher. Okay, that's true. I would actually like that. That's true, because then we can have a rape fantasy. That's true. Although, why not? Why not? You'll allow like pedophiles to have child robots, but you won't allow people to have rape fantasies because that's evil. What's actually wrong with a rape fantasy? I mean, we already have rape porn, so why not a rape robot? It doesn't really make sense. Ooh, look at this. This creates a wider implication, mainly that non consensual sex with robots might also lead to the dehumanization of human women. This is similar to feminist critiques of attitudes towards porn and sex workers. So, this is kind of what we're talking about. Anthropology and robotics expert brings up the unequal power dynamic and the lack of respect that customers show sex workers to predict the future of sex robots. Technology is not neutral. I love these broad, like meaningless statements. It's informed by class, race, and gender. Yes, the intersectionality of vaginal sex with my plastic robot. Very nice. Can you imagine like people trying to form legislation around sex robots? Sir, I would like to enter some evidence into the stand. See video 1. It's just a guy like raw dogging a robot. Now you can see here the robot is really saying no, even though he is pounding her puniti. Sir, I would like to claim an injury. My dick got chopped off inside the robot. It's still in there. You're like, okay. Just be like a complete mess. It's just so dumb. Like, why do we have to create all these complex laws around sex robots? Just let the fuckers have their sex robots. Let them eat cake. Like, Christ. Theory first espoused by... Oh, incels, guys. Look, guys, you're an incel. A more contemporary example of how Richardson's theory plays out is a conversation about the redistribution of sex. Oh, they're actually talking about this. Okay. So they're actually talking about sexual distribution, kind of like an economic system. All right. A theory first espoused by Robin Hanson and later championed by violent, involuntary, celibate, incel. Violent. This implies that incels are violent, right? Because there's no separator. They put violent right before involuntary, celibate. So a reader is going to interpret incel to mean violent. It's very like yeah, so they just throw the word violent to like slander their opponents. The redistribution of sex involves the state controlling women's bodies and the men they have access to in order to make sure everyone has access to consensual sex. If some women don't consent, sex workers and sex robots will take their place. Okay, but why would the government own the sex robots? Wouldn't it be in the hands of private citizens? It's actually more empowering to the private citizen to have sex robots. Because then you're not relying on like corporations. You're not relying on the government. It's actually the other way around because the government has control over marriage and most of the contracts involving relationships between human beings. That's a government's role. The divorce court is, yeah, it's law, but a lot of it overlaps with the government, judges and whatnot. So it's actually moving it from the government's jurisdiction to a jurisdiction of private, like corporations and individuals. The only thing that will suck is that you have to pay some stupid like Jewish you have to pay like a monthly fee to keep using your sex robot, and you have to like purchase DLC. Oh, purchase the BDSM DLC. Purchase the Swallow Your Load DLC. Oh my gosh. One of the main reasons for this is the assumption that there is no complex. It'll be like a gamer thing where it'll like have game breaking bugs, like you nut in her mouth one time and she like starts fritzing out and like clamps down on your cock like Freddy Fazbear. You're like, fuck. Claim a lawsuit. You'll have like game breaking bugs on first day patches. Due to several incidents where post orgasm robots would start crawling on the walls and the ceilings. Due to incidents where the AI would start sounding like children, we immediately had to patch this and replace it. Thank you for paying $800 a month. If we legally incorporate sex robots into the legal community, but we don't require that consent, it means that the legal community does not take a strong stance on non-consensual sex with human-like... This is very boring. But what's to say? They don't like sex bots. Sex bots can't consent, guys. They can't consent. Yeah, because they're a robot. Duh. Does my computer need consent? Do I have to ask my computer for consent when I turn it on? That's sexual assault. You're turning me on without permission. Because it's a robot. But basically they don't want men to be able to have autonomy and control over their sexual experience. They want to have control over men. That's the simple answer. That's another big reason that like women and governments don't want that. It's because they want to maintain control over men's sexuality. They want to keep you buying into some kind of an economic system. And if men had sex bots, there's actually a big problem with that, namely that it could be a one-time purchase. And that could actually that could ruin the porn industry, because the porn industry makes a lot of money. Huge industry. And if they can't exist anymore, they get replaced by sex robots, which are like a car in that they're a one-time purchase. Yeah, you might have to do some maintenance. She's got some nut juice up in her like upper jaw that's kind of making the jaw not work anymore. Do you think you could fix that? Imagine being a mechanic for a sex robot. You're like, fuck. I think I found the problem. You fucking bashed its jaw in. Stop fucking the mouth so hard. You just say, oh, sorry, officer. Sorry, Mr. Mechanic. Yeah. Although you get to replace the puniti. Can you imagine the sex robot has like a has a detachable component for the puniti where you get to like swap it in and out for new parts. It's like a modular design. The new puniti, super puniti, 10 times stronger grip. You're like, okay. Instead of an oil change, it's like a puniti change where they have to like reinsert the ridges back into the cervix. You're like, oh my god. But yeah, okay, so that's what you can kind of take from this. Governments and businesses want to control men's sexuality and keep profiting off of it through porn. They don't want men to be satisfied. They don't want them to actually own their own sexual autonomy. Because if men own a sex robot, and then men don't need to use porn, they don't need to give a bunch of money to women, that majorly empowers men. Because then men own the means to their sexual fulfillment, which is basically a patriarchy, right? Because that's the same deal you had with women, where men, in many words, many meanings of the word, owned women. And they prefer porn because you don't own the porn, so you have to keep purchasing it. You have to keep using it. You have to keep paying for OnlyFans. You have to keep watching the ads, taking in the advertising. Same with chatbots. But if you owned a robot, a physical robot, and that was yours, then you basically own your own sexual freedom, which is something they most definitely don't want. And women aren't thinking like that. They're more thinking like, well, I can't rope down a man and force him to pay me child support and alimony whenever I decided, right? So they lose that loaded gun that they have on men's head through marriage. But also they're guilty. They feel guilty about failing men, and that's the real answer, guys. Is that's my position on it. I'll finish the way I started, which was basically that I think it's not good. I mean, it's suboptimal and not for me personally, and I would encourage you to aspire to something better. But I also understand that not everyone is going to be a winner. And society and the way it's structured has massively failed men. Men who did nothing wrong, men who are just average, men who were born a 5'3" Asian guy, not making a whole lot of money because of where he's from, born in South Korea where the fertility rate is like 0.7. You're just born into a shitty system. And so I get it. I am not going to shame you for doing what you have to do to meet a basic biological urge. Something that every healthy, normal man is built with is a huge desire to procreate and spread your genes. It's completely normal, completely validated. And yeah, it's unfortunate that men have to turn to these kind of base, kind of gross, synthetic, animalistic means. But people are out neglecting men. And so when men figure out how to take care of themselves and take it into their own hands, literally, right? Then I'm not going to blame men. I think that's fair. So that's my position on sex bots. And let me know if that resonates with you, if that makes sense to you. Women are actually just guilty that they've failed men and they aren't taking better care of the men in their society. And that makes them very uncomfortable. All right. I'm heading out. This has been N. I will see everybody later. Take care.